Kate Anthony is the author of The D Word, Making the Ultimate Decision About Your Marriage, and she's the host of the critically acclaimed and New York Times recommended podcast, The Divorce Survival Guide. Kate runs a variety of coaching programs for women who are contemplating or going through divorce, including her popular group coaching program, Phoenix Rising, a divorce empowerment collective. Kate is certified as a life and relationship coach, a domestic violence advocate, a co-parenting specialist, and a high-conflict divorce coach. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Tracy.
Well, I'm so excited. You have been with us several times before, and I'm always so happy to have you here because, one, I love you, and two, because you are so smart and experienced when it comes to all things divorced. And that's something that's really important to me, is having people who are educated, credentialed, and really have the street smarts about divorce, and you kind of got it all.
Thanks, love. I appreciate that. And the feeling's very mutual, as you know.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Today, we are here to talk about financial abuse, which many women experience in their relationships, marriages, and divorces. So it's not just divorce. And for a long time, I think that people didn't really consider financial abuse to be a form of abuse, right? The financial control they didn't necessarily think was abuse. It was just, oh, he controls the money. But they didn't think about how that traps women in marriages and relationships.
Yes. And we're socialized to have that be the brass ring, right? My husband makes all the money and I stay home and he takes care of all the money and I don't really know anything that goes on with that. And that's fine if you still have access, if when you say, hey, honey, I'm really curious, how much money do we have? Or do we have a retirement account? What's going on with it? And the answer is shady and covert and don't you worry about it. You don't need to know, right? If there's any resistance to access, then we have a problem. And that's access to information, access to bank accounts, statements, online accounts, all of that.
Right.
You should
being
have
able to spend.
Being able to spend. You should, if you're getting an allowance, that's not okay. Right now, there's a budget, right? But if you are being told you are only allowed to spend X amount of money, and here it is, if you're handed, $200 a week for groceries, and that's all you're allowed to spend, that's a problem, right? So there is this romantic notion of oh, well, I'll just be, he takes care of it and I don't have to think about it. But if that bleeds into that it's hidden in any way covert, that you don't have access, then we have a problem. And right, there's lots of different forms of financial abuse, which I actually want to get into.
Define financial abuse for us and tell us about these different forms, because it's a little bit different. When people think abuse, the traditional way to think about it is physical violence, but there is so much more.
There is so much more. So first of all, it's important to know that financial abuse occurs in 99% of all domestic violence cases. 99%. Because it's the easiest way to control women, right? Abuse, all forms of domestic violence and abuse are about power and control. What better way to control people but with their money, right? And
it's acceptable. It is socially acceptable to control your partner with money, because the response you will get from people is, oh, heavens, your family has a budget and you want to cry about that? No, we're not talking about the family with a budget. We're talking about you are completely restricted in your spending, in your access to information and things like that. It's different, and there's a continuum.
That's right. 100%. Here's the thing. Victims of financial abuse collectively lose a total of 8 million days of paid work each year, right? There's stress involved. There's one form of domestic of financial abuse is blocking your access to your job,
right?
Creating it such that you are unable to go to work and make your own money, keeping you reliant on your partner for all money.
Let's talk about that for a
Yeah.
second, how they block your access to work, because I think if
That's
people
right.
haven't been exposed to this before, they might not know some of the techniques that are used. So
Mm,
I'll
mhm,
go
mhm, mhm.
first, like
Yes, go for it.
making it so you are missing days of work
Mhm.
because you have to care for the children, because you have to deal with a family situation, because you have to clean up a mess that your spouse has made. They create scenarios in which you are forced to miss work and then
Mhm.
ultimately might end up getting fired.
That's right. And we saw this enormously during COVID when an estimated 5 million women left the workforce during COVID because everyone's working from home and suddenly their spouses, mostly men in these cases, just sort of deemed their jobs more important. And maybe they were the higher income earners, but also often they weren't. But they would just be like, "Oh, I've got a meeting, I gotta go," and they'd go in the bedroom and shut the door. And the women were left going, I have a meeting too, but I guess I have to homeschool. Like, we're not having a conversation about this. So this increased tremendously during lockdown, in particular when we had our kids at home, because it was just sort of understood that, or not understood, but it was just assumed that the homeschooling and the parenting and all of the things at home were going to be on us.
Right.
Right.
I've also seen clients where their spouse has shown up to their job and made a scene
That's
trying
right.
to get the spouse fired, like
That's
creating a
right.
situation where your employer is like, gosh, we're not sure if we can keep you employed here.
Right. It's not safe for the other employee. Like, we actually have to protect our place of business because they're coming and making a scene, or they keep calling you that there's something wrong, you have to come home, right? All of this, right? 8 million days of paid work each year are lost because of these
Wow.
shenanigans. There's credit impact. 59% of people's credit is negatively impacted by their abuser, whether they're taking credit cards out in their name using. I have a client who's in the middle of a divorce, and well, they weren't in the middle of a divorce, but like a year ago, as soon as he learned that they were going to be getting divorced, he reactivated credit cards in her name using her social security number that had been sort of dormant, right? They weren't closed, they just hadn't used them in a few years. And he just started actively using them, but re-upped them in her name and using her social security number. So now all of the tens of thousands of dollars of debt that he's racked up in her name. And she is legally responsible for it.
Yes, let's be clear, because in the divorce court judge could say he must pay those debts, but the credit card company doesn't care what the divorce court says. All the credit
That's
card
right.
company cares about is whose name is legally on that debt. And so she could still be on the hook for it.
That's right. That's right. Now, she did call them and she had actually blocked him. She had blocked him from that account, but somehow they had decided to okay his reactivation. So, she's in negotiations, but absolutely, if she had not blocked him, if she didn't really have a legal leg to stand on, she would be responsible for that.
And this is why I tell my clients, you have to run your credit report regularly so you can see. The second he started using one of those cards, it would have popped up. So I tell people at least monthly run your report, but you can actually go look at your credit report daily, weekly, if you want
Yeah,
to, with many
sure.
of these sites.
That's right. That's right. So, there are the other thing about financial abuse that I want to highlight is that sometimes it looks like chronic underearning. Sometimes it looks like the guy or whoever who is down in the basement playing video games all day long, not going to work, forcing you into employment and being 100% responsible for all of the bills and usually the parenting and all of the domestic labor, et cetera, et cetera. But the chronic under earning is also a form of financial abuse.
And let's be clear, we're not talking about a stay-at-home parent who is having
No, we're
primary
not.
responsibility for the kids. We're talking about someone who is basically hands off with the kids, hands off with the household, and also does not go to work.
That's right. That's right. Or when they go to work, they take a job that is so beneath what their degrees would entitle them to or whatever. And then you've got a situation where if you're getting divorced, you have to pay spousal support to somebody who has a master's degree but is working as a customer service representative, for example, as that was the case with one of my clients. In that case, I had her do a vocational evaluation, and he had a year. He had a year to get a job, commensurate with his education and with, his previous employment history. And she did pay for a year, but with that understanding that he would eventually meet the threshold of his abilities in this case. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm sitting here asking myself, gosh, I'm not sure if I'm being financially abused or not, how am I going to know?
Well, so I would say if you're asking the question, there might be something wrong, right? If you're feeling like there is inequity, if you feel like there's a deep financial imbalance in your relationship. And look, again, as you said, we're not talking about I'm the stay-at-home mom. Am I the financial abuser? No. If you are contributing domestically, if you're doing the job of a stay-at-home parent, if you are picking the kids up from school, you're cooking, you're shopping, you're managing the household, like you're doing your job. Are you busy all day long? Yes, you are. You're working, right? No. But if you feel like there's another way to know is, do they spend lavishly on themselves and sort of withhold your, your spending? So my ex says we didn't really have this, right, but there was one way that I felt there was always this imbalance, which was that he always drove a really nice car and I got like an okay one, or he got really nice designer clothes and I shopped at like Target or whatever, right? So like if there's this discrepancy in the spending on real things, like cars are a really good measure of this, right? He's driving a Lamborghini, you're driving a Ford Focus. There's a problem with that.
But Kate, he has an image to maintain for his career. That's the only reason why. And it doesn't make sense to have two really expensive cars, does it?
Let's have two equal cars. Or, right? I know somebody who she has been driving around in a minivan because she's got a bunch of kids. I think two. But she has a minivan and the AC didn't work. And, he drove, I think, a new Tesla, right? Well, the minivan was appropriate for her, but not one that didn't work.
Right.
Right. And he did not give her access to money. So here's another story from another client who had, she was the stay-at-home parent. But she also had a career. She was an actor, so she would, work here and there or whatever. But somehow he decided that she was 100% responsible for everything to do with the children financially.
Oh.
So he would pay the mortgage and he would pay the bills, but she was 100% responsible for preschool, daycare, diapers, formula, baby food. All of anything to do with the children was her responsibility. Well, she barely worked because she was a mother of two very small children. And she's driving around this minivan that doesn't have AC, that's like breaking down constantly. And he has a Tesla. He has a lot of savings, right? There's no commingling of funds in a way that is fair and balanced. So she went into gobs and gobs and gobs of debt. And then when she said, this is unfair, I need your help, I'm in so much debt, he said, I'm not going to dig you out because you're obviously so bad with money.
Oh, God, the you're bad with money thing.
Well, it's like, she's not bad. And I said, wait, is it because you're in so much debt that means you're bad with money? And she's like, yes, it's because I have so much debt. And I'm like, the debt that he forced you into by withholding money and forcing you into financial responsibilities that you were unable to meet based on your job and salary.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the impacts of the financial abuse.
Well, I mean, look, the biggest one is on your independence, right? Most people who are being financially abused, and that's why it occurs in 99% of domestic violence cases, is that you can't leave. How are you supposed to leave this person uh, if you can't put down a down payment on an apartment? If you have no credit, if you right, so the control and you have no independence at this point, so that's a huge impact. um your self-esteem is crushed, right? You feel like, and you're often made to feel like you're worthless, you're not contributing, you are not a provider, your contribution is so minimized that you can't keep a job. What's wrong with you? Right? You get fired from your job because your spouse keeps coming and like making a scene or calling you home, whatever. But all of a sudden now you can't keep a job, right? So your esteem is suffering so deeply. And it's really hard to have trust. Like, how do you have trust in this relationship? You don't trust yourself, right? Because the gaslighting is so extreme, right? As with that client that I was telling you about, she was so convinced that she was bad with money until we sort of broke it apart and was like, wait, but you're not bad with money. He's forcing you into a position. He's forcing you to go into debt because he's making you spend money that you don't have for a responsibility. Like, I'm sorry, did he not make those children with you? Right? So, the gaslighting and the sense of self and the self-esteem, and really just that sense of trusting your gut, trusting yourself. You're like, something's wrong. So it's gaslighting. You're doubting yourself.
Well, and people will say, okay, if you need to leave this relationship, then you're going to have to find friends or family who are going to help you. Can someone loan you money? Can someone let you move in with them? Well, the reality is there are lots and lots of adults who do not have friends and family that they can rely on in that way.
That's right.
They simply do not have that as an option. And for us to assume that they do is ludicrous.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. The other thing that I always say to my clients is, my clients who are stuck in these financially abusive relationships, I will often say, you will be better off divorced than married, because if you can prove through, your own sleuthing and following all of Tracy's work, hint, hint, if you can show what the money is and what the money, you get half of it. So why don't we, if we can find a way for you to get out, right? And again, like you said, like sometimes that's much harder said than done. But if we can get you out, if we can get a temporary support order for you, an emergency temporary support order through some form of legal aid, you will have more money, more than likely. And I mean, unless there isn't money, whatever. But, if you're being financially abused, usually there is money. You just don't have access to it. You'll get access to money that you've never had access to before. Then you can start rebuilding. But that's a really hard, it's like this, there is a catch-22 to it. That's really difficult. Yeah. And I also want to talk about the long-term impacts, right? The longer term impacts, we are talking people that end up not having a 401k, not having investments, not having savings. And so, people, when you agree to, let's say, be a stay-at-home parent, I believe that, first of all, I don't believe that that's a wise choice for most people. It's usually women, and it usually just causes more problems down the road. But if you do, I want you to take it really seriously and have okay, if I'm going to be pulling myself out of the workforce and giving up my contributions to my 401k, I want to make sure that the family is depositing money into a retirement account for me. Specifically for me. And if everything goes swimmingly, then we have great retirement. But if it doesn't, I actually still have my own personal retirement account. That would be a very smart thing to do.
Well, the longer you put off leaving the financially abusive relationship, I think the worse it is because
Mhm.
there is going to be a period of having to rebuild. You're going to have
Yes.
to seek employment and start to work your way up a career ladder. And it's like, you know, if you stick around for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you are delaying the inevitable in most scenarios. And I'm not saying that it can't ever be fixed in a relationship because it could be, but statistics tell us in most of these relationships it will not be mended and you will have to leave eventually.
Yes. I mean, absolutely. I mean, the thing about abuse is that it is deliberate, right? If you say to somebody, "Hey, I don't have access to the accounts, and I feel a little bit, I feel a certain way about that. I don't feel comfortable not knowing what kind of accounts we have and how much money we have." And their response is, "Don't worry, honey. I've got it. I've got it covered. Everything's fine." They're hiding something from you. Um, because the only answer to that should be, oh, of course. Oh, sure, honey. Of course. I thought you didn't want to, but yeah, let's sit down. Let's go over it. Um, and if they say that, then yes, great. That's not abuse. That's just oh shit, we kind of didn't divide this up well when we started. Um, but most abuse is intentional. They know what they're doing. And so the idea that you could say to them, "Hey, but this qualifies as financial abuse. Don't you think you don't want to be a financial abuser?" Is that's never going to change the situation. They're never
Right.
going to go, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that." you know.
Well, Kate, they might say, I'm trying, but I'm trying.
But I'm trying. You're trying. What's the pin? I'm trying, right? There is no try. There is only do.
There's only do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what kind of steps can we take so that we can safely exit the situation if there is financial abuse?
Yeah. The most important thing you can do is to start gaining some kind of financial independence. I don't care if that's, setting up an Etsy store, if it's getting a sock and keeping it in your glove compartment and you're just stashing money in there $5 at a time. If you start, open a separate bank account that is only in your name and deposit as much as you can whenever you can, whether that's getting cash back at the grocery store and putting it away, whether that is, getting a side job, or, as you said, borrowing from friends and family. If that is available to you, this is the time. This is not a time to be shy. This is not a time to feel embarrassed. You might feel all of the feelings. Please do it anyway. Your closest confidants. Hey, this is what's going on in my relationship. Talk to somebody. Say it out loud. I don't have access to money. I fear that I'm being financially abused. I feel trapped. I'm trying to find ways to get out, but I don't have any money to do it. I think I'm going to have some if I get out. I think I'll be able to pay you back. Can you help me? And if the answer is no, like if you don't have those people, there are legal aid services all over the place that can help. There are national organizations. Every domestic violence shelter has an advocacy arm. Domestic violence shelters are not just to go and hide. They are full of resources and advocacy.
Yes.
And so call one, call many. They are sadly overrun, but call them and see if you can find one that has an advocate, that has legal aid. Many of them have legal aid services. Give them a call and get as much free help as you can possibly get. It is out there, I promise.
Getting an income source of your own, to me, is the most critical. And I
Yep.
know that that's easier said than done because, as we talked about in the beginning, your spouse is probably blocking your access to work, creating situations where you can't go to work. But you have to start thinking long term about getting full time employment and then
Mhm.
working your way up from there into better jobs. And my clients say to me, but I want to be a stay at home mom. This works for me. It's good for my kids. But if you have to leave your spouse, it's really not a reality for most women.
That's right. That's right. Um, And I would also say that, look, it is a choice. It's a choice that I made, but it is a choice that relinquishes our financial power and independence to another person. And that's just, if you kind of look at it objectively, it's kind of insane, right? Like objectively speaking, and we romanticize it, and I get it, but it's just not safe. It's just not safe to do. And you know, maybe we want to teach our children the lessons of hard work and agency and being fully self-supporting and and whatever, doing whatever it takes, right? I know so many people who were raised, myself included, by single moms who just, worked 3 jobs, did everything they could to put food on the table. And I'll tell you what, the lessons learned from that are, I think, some of the most important ones that I could have learned. Right. And yeah, I had my mom around, but she was in grad school. She was working many jobs. I was a latchkey kid in New York City in the 80s, like I'm okay.
Wow.
I'm okay. Right. I am
did all
tough as
right.
nails and I'm resilient. Right. Yeah.
I want to end this on what is a little bit more of a positive note, I think. I want to
Okay.
talk about how we can empower people who have been victims of financial abuse, how as a community we can be more supportive, and what we can do to encourage, uplift, and help them navigate this.
Absolutely. Look, I think just talking about it is so important, right?
Yes.
Tell your secrets. I'll tell you what, I'm in a mom's group, in a local moms group, just in my neighborhood, and it's limited, right? So it's capped so it doesn't get crazy. It's very small and it's very intimate, and women just tell their secrets there all day long. And it is the most supportive, non-judgmental community that I've ever been a part of. And it really is. It's like we tell our secrets and everyone goes, "We got you. How can we help? What can we do?" There's so much generosity. And I think so many of us are so scared to tell our stories because we feel there's so much secret shame around what we're experiencing. And there are millions of people experiencing the same thing. And so if you can get past the shame and speak your truth to, I don't know, if it's, an Al-Anon group, at an AA meeting, at your church, at your, like, wherever you have safe community, if it's your family, share it, speak your truth, because I'll tell you what, you will have so many people saying, "Oh, wow, really? Me too. You know what? I know someone who went through this and I don't know what she did, but I'll put you in touch with her and she can help you," right? If you just speak your truth, you will find your people and they will rally around you and they will come to your aid.
Tell me about your Phoenix Rising group for women.
Yes. Speaking of
Yes.
community. So, Phoenix Rising is a divorce empowerment collective for women going through divorce. And it is full of women who are, doing the work, boots on the ground, really changing their stories, changing the narratives, putting an end to the generational cycles. That most of them are leaving abusive relationships, and they are powerhouses and they are incredible. And we have calls every week. We bring in special guest experts every month. Tracy has been a guest expert, and I'm sure we'll call upon her to do it again. And it's rolling enrollment. So women come in whenever, right? You can join today. You can join next week. You can join next month. It doesn't matter. But when you get there, you get access to all of my online programs. You get access to this incredible community. And me, I run these calls. I am very hands-on, and we have a very small Facebook group. Well, not very small, but it's a Facebook group just for the people who are actively involved. Private, thank you. Who are actively involved in the program. And so there's support and community happening all the time. And there are so many women who get there and they just listen to a call and they're like, "Oh my God, I feel so much better. I feel seen. I feel heard. I feel understood. And I feel informed." And that's
Well,
my
to
goal
be
for everybody.
clear,
Mhm.
To be clear, Kate is one of the best divorce coaches out there. So when it comes to understanding your divorce process, knowing what's happening, being ready, being prepared, having the right information in
Yeah,
hand, that's part of the group instead of
that's right.
spending hours Googling or listening to
Oh God.
random weirdos on the internet. And then the other aspect that I've seen is the community. As an outsider who has been a part of your group, has watched what's gone on, it is really inspiring to see people rally around each other for that support and for that information that everyone needs.
That's right. Because if there's something that you're hitting up against, someone else, maybe in a different state, but they've hit up against it, and they're like, I don't know, ask your attorney this, because this is what my attorney said, right? Oh my God, I didn't know that. Cool. Also, sometimes stuff I don't know, because I'm like, I don't know the laws in all of the states, and I'm not an attorney, right? But it's wonderful. It's wonderful, right? It's a collective. And so in a collective, you have the wisdom of each individual in the group and the experiences and the strength and the hope of each individual creating the whole. And it's amazing.
Well, I am going to put links in the show notes to your website, to the group. It has been fabulous talking with you as usual. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. Anytime.